Today we're going to talk about truth, and we're going to talk about the three main theories of truth. But before we do that, just want to show you this little meme quickly. So up here we've got George Orwell and Aldous Huxley. Okay, so both have written some form of considered sort of classic literature in the past 100 years. Okay, so Orwell, 1984. Who's read 1984? None of you guys. Okay, short. It's interesting, okay, and this is sort of Orwell's foresight into communism, right, and authoritarianism. So what was his fear in 1984? He feared that the government, they're going to sort of seize power, they're going to ban books, and that truth is going to be concealed from us. In 1984, there's this Ministry of Truth, and there's this guy that works for the Ministry of Truth, and his job is to alter the newspapers in the past so that it supports what the government says every time they change their mind. That's his job in the Ministry of Truth. All right. So in 1984, people are sort of controlled by pain. They're controlled by fear. You can think of this authoritarian regime. And that's contrasted with Aldous Huxley. Okay, he wrote the book. Does anyone know the book we're going to talk about here?
Brave New World.
Brave New World, really good. Okay, so Brave New World is like a dystopian future where it's sort of the opposite of this. People aren't regulated like that. They've got this drug called soma. And Flynn, this, you think of hedonism and seeking pleasure. This drug makes you happy every day. It's like everyone taking this drug called soma, keeps them happy. And for Huxley, because everyone's got so much pleasure in their life, they're not interested in philosophical pursuits. Why would you be? Why would you want to know what's true? He feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. All right? And in Brave New World, people are controlled not by coercion and force, but by pleasure, This is the Romans, bread and circuses. If you give a people food and entertainment, they're going to do everything you want. Who's more right with the current vision of our society? Huxley. Look, we're just surrounded by all the food we want, all the entertainment we want. All right. Why would you complain about the way things are? Things are great. So for Huxley, truth, and like you see this in the internet age, truth is drowned in a sea of information, isn't it? We're constantly presented with contradictory information. I don't know what to believe. I'll just go watch Netflix instead. Just get some more pleasure. All right. So we're going to examine three dominant theories of truth. This is what they are: the coherence theory, the pragmatic theory, and the correspondence theory. So they're the three theories that we're going to look at. So we'll start with correspondence. For a correspondence theory, this is what most of us mean when we say the word true. Okay? A true statement corresponds with reality. That means if I make a statement about reality and it's true, that's the way reality is. Okay? So I'll show you a quick clip from. I've been wanting to show this clip, and I'm thinking, what lesson is it appropriate for? It's from an old movie, and it's called They Live. And it's sort of a sci-fi film. All right? And this guy's just found this really cool pair of sunglasses. Okay, so I'll show you what's happening when he's putting them on. point about a couple of things. I mean, you can think about like media and advertising, okay? But the point of it here is to say, wouldn't it be cool if you could get this pair of sunglasses such that you would see things as they are, the things in themselves? Because obviously we don't see everything as it is. We have a very limited and narrow perspective of it. So that's correspondence theory, okay? Is that if we could see things as they were and to make a truth statement describes reality as it is. Okay, let's look at the next one, which is the coherence theory of truth. Okay, so this is reasonably similar, but this says something is true if it coheres, if it matches up with another statement that is also true. So truth statements, they sort of mesh together like a spider web to paint an approximate picture or an approximate model of the world. Doesn't need to correspond to the world, just needs to be approximately true. Just needs to cohere with one another. So I was trying to think of some examples for this, and I've got a couple. So one might be like Newton's universal law of gravitation, okay? Every single piece of matter in the universe pulls on every other single piece of matter in the universe, okay? So my head right now is pulling on the star Alpha Centauri, which is 2.1 light years away, all right? And so is your head, all right? Every single piece of matter in the universe exerts a gravitational force on every other piece of matter. Newton's universal law of gravitation. Okay, so that's one statement, okay? So then a statement that coheres with that, okay, Newton's universal law is my head exerts a force on Alpha Centauri. They cohere with one another. Another example might be, okay, so here's an example of how we can have something that's not true, okay, doesn't correspond to reality, 2 plus 2 equals 5. But if this is a statement, what's it going to cohere with, okay? Mathematically speaking, 5 take 2 equals 2, okay? These two statements cohere with one another even though they're false, okay? So coherence theory is just about truth statements bonding together to make a web, to paint a picture of the world. Okay, and then there is the pragmatic theory of truth. And this is what we're going to spend the rest of the lesson discussing. It's super fascinating, and I'm going to make an argument that you as a biological creature necessarily live a pragmatic theory of truth. So pragmatic theory of truth says if it's useful, it's true. Okay, so we can think of loads of things. Okay, an example might be God. All right, I'm going to argue it's useful to believe in God. Okay, why? For a number of reasons. It provides some sort of source for all being. Okay, it provides this sort of sense of moral realism. Okay, what's some other things we can argue for from pragmatic theory of truth? It's useful to believe in free will. All right, it's useful to believe that you have free will because then you can implement yourself as a free agent. I mentioned moral realism before. Why would that be useful? It enables the flourishing of society, enables us to get along. So if something's useful, it's true. That's what pragmatic theory says. So I'm going to make an argument today that that's actually how you live. So here's the argument that I'm going to make. Everything that is true, premise one, everything that is true is limited to what you perceive. Premise two, everything that you perceive is limited to what is useful. And so the conclusion, everything that is true is limited to what is useful. Okay? Do we have any thoughts on that to start with before we sort of address it and make an argument for it? The first premise there, okay? All that is true is limited to what you perceive. Does anyone agree? Does anyone disagree? What do you reckon, Nat? Do you agree with it?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. Emma? Not sure, yeah. Do you understand what it's saying? Everything that's true, like for it to be true, you have to perceive it. And so it's limited by what you perceive. Flynn? Yeah, a bit hesitant, okay.
Yeah.
What about the second one? All that you perceive is limited to what is useful. This is what I'm going to build my case around. All right, so which premise is more doubtful for you guys? Premise one or premise two? Which one are you more? The second one. Excellent. Okay, good. So I can make a strong argument there, I think. So let's get into it. Perception. Okay. Any observation you make is going to depend on two things. I've separated them into two things. The first thing is a frame of reference, and the second thing is a value structure. I'm going to describe what both of them are, and then argue that every perception that you have comes from these two things. Okay, so what's a perception? Something that you see, something that you feel, something that you smell, some sense experience, some observation. So what do I mean by a frame of reference? Well, we've got a chair here, right? Frame of reference for the chair. So we're going back to ontology a little bit. What are the possible frames of reference we have for the chair? Okay, we can see it as a chair. We can see it as something to sit on, to spin around on. Right? I could give my children a ride on it. It could be something for fun. There are a couple of frames of reference. Another frame of reference is that it's a bunch of atoms. Okay, we could zoom into that sort of subatomic level and say, what's it made up of fundamentally? What are the fundamental units? So we have two frames of reference there. All right. What about this? You're watching TV. I'm going to show you how you apply frames of reference. You're watching TV, and all of a sudden it switches off, and you're like, it's so annoying when the TV just turns off. Like, why does it do that? And you're like, going to curse. I'm going to say a swear word. You know, like what's super interesting, okay, is that circuit in your body associated with swearing and cursing is the same circuit that chimps and monkeys have when they see a snake. So like us swearing is like a monkey saying snake, you know, sort of like like talking about circuits in your body, right? So you're a very complex organism, and you're a bunch of all of these circuits stacked on top of each other, and you're incredibly complex. But now there's some really simple ones, like when you put your hand on a hot stove, okay, your hand gets pulled away without any thought about it. All right, that's an instinct. And so, you know, people think your brain is just in your head. All right. But that takes too long for the sense to travel from your arm to your brain. Your brain's like you've got this spinal cord, all right? Your brain's sort of located the whole way through your body. And so that instinct is something that's way more fundamental than perhaps even consciousness. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. So TV switches off and you curse, and you're like, what's going on? This is terrible. And so you pull the remote out and you're pressing the button and it's not working. So you go, okay, what's going on? All right, so frame of analysis. All right, what have we done? TV's gone off. Okay, problem solving. Let's troubleshoot. Remote, not working. Okay, what do we do next? We go up to the power cord, make sure it's plugged in. Yep, it's plugged in. It's turned on. Still not working. What's going on? Maybe the fuse is gone in the power box. So you go to the power box around the side of the house. You open it up. No, all the fuses are on. All right, so it should be working. What's going on? Go out, look at the street light. The light's gone out. Okay. The neighbour's power's not working either. Okay, so what's happened? The power has gone out. So look at those frames of analysis we had for this problem of the TV not working. Different frames of analysis. A car, okay? If your car gets a flat tyre, all right, gets a flat tyre, you don't go buy a new car, do you? What do? You fix the tyre, you get a new tyre. Okay, so a couple of frames of analysis there. You know, what's the problem? Is the problem with the car? Is the problem with the tyre? The problem's with the tyre. That can be replaced, save money. Okay. How else do we have frames of analysis? All right, let's think about the issue of climate change. We need to do something about it. All right, but there's an argument to be made that why bother, guys? All right, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but in a certain amount of years, the sun is going to expand and swallow the earth anyway. What's the point? All right, what's the point of caring for the environment? Okay, what's the point of, you know, worrying about that kind of thing if the sun's just going to swallow the earth anyway? It doesn't matter. So you see how we've gone from this sort of this window of our time to this massive cosmic scale, and that's a frame of reference, and it's changed what our solution is to a certain problem. Okay, so I've got two games I'm going to play with you guys. Okay, the first one will probably be a little bit easier. I'm going to keep playing, I think, until everyone gets this game, and then the second one we'll see how we go. It's going to be a little bit more challenging. But frame of reference here. Yeah, keep it rolling. So I'm going to go to the moon, and these are the kind of games you play when you go camping. Maybe you played some on retreat or something. I don't know, if you pick it up, don't say what the rule is, don't say what the frame of reference is, just let's continue to play the game until everyone gets it. I'm going to the moon, and I'm going to take 1 apple and 2 bananas. Okay, who wants to come to the moon with me? All right, if you want to come to the moon, you have to be able to bring something along that that matches my frame of reference. Who wants to have a go? Alex.
1 apple, 2 bananas, and 3 grapes.
You can't come to the moon, Emma.
1 apple, 2 bananas, and 3 carrots.
You can come to the moon, Emma. Excellent, well done. So we're going to the moon, we've got 1 apple, 2 bananas, and 3 carrots. Do you want to have another go?
1 apple, 2 bananas, 3 carrots, and 4
Dragon fruits.
dragon fruits.
You can come to the moon, you can come to the moon. Yep, Mercedes, do you reckon you can come to the moon?
An apple, 2 bananas, 3 carrots, I almost forgot what you said, 4 dragon fruits. Comes after 2. Can I bring 5 elephants?
Yep, that'd be fine. Yep. You guys cracked it?
Yeah.
Yep. So what would you bring next? Don't have to repeat it all, but
Fruit Loops.
Yeah, Fruit Loops.
how many?
6.
6.
6. Not a lot of Fruit
What were
Loops.
we up to? I think we're up to 6. Very good. Okay, I think we've cracked it.
6 Fruit Loops.
Okay, so what was the frame of reference? All right, so I wasn't heaps clear. I was just going for a number and a letter, but it also turned into, it had to be sort of something edible. I mean, you can eat an elephant, but that's why you picked dragon fruit. You know, we had apple, banana, carrot. Okay, dragon fruit, something that you can eat. All right, so that's the frame of reference. Okay, this next one's going to be a bit harder. Okay, so frame of reference. What's our frame of reference here? So I'm going out to catch some monkeys. I'm going to go catch some monkeys. All right, so watch me catch the monkeys. Watch me. How many monkeys did I catch that time?
None.
None. I don't have faith in you, sir.
That was 8 monkeys. Okay, ready? How many?
1.
2.
2's correct.
Oh.
All right, watch carefully.
5.
How many?
5. 8.
That was 2.
It was 2.
Frame of reference. So here's a hint. Listen carefully. How many?
4.
2.
2's correct. So let's see if you can get it again now that you guessed it correctly. Feels like an idiot. How many that time?
2.
4. 4 is correct. So we haven't started to notice a pattern here yet. Okay.
Feel bad for the video.
How many then?
1.
3.
3. 3. I think he's cracked it. Okay. How many on that go?
5.
5 is good. He's cracked it. All right, so he's got the right frame of reference, but we're sort of struggling to see it a little bit. I'm going to do one more. Listen carefully. How many was it then?
4.
3.
How many, gents?
5.
5. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we might have to practice that a little bit, but that's your frame of reference. All right, so that's showing you that in order to answer the question, in order to have a perception, you're looking at what's the frame of reference. Many of you might have seen this before. If you have seen it, please don't ruin it for other people. I expect most of us have probably seen it.
I see this nearly every year.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, one of these.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball.
Pay attention carefully.
How many passes did you count?
I got 15.
15.
The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Is that costume?
Yes,
Alright.
pretty
Look at his face. Why is it walking like that too?
This video is from research by
So everyone's seen it before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are heaps of these, alright? So maybe I should have pulled one up that you haven't seen before. But what does it show? And like, I'm gonna be honest, the first time I did it, didn't see the gorilla. Okay, so, and hopefully that was the same for you guys. You're sort of really focusing on what's your frame of reference. My frame of reference is how many passes are going on. And so you're filtering out everything else and you're focusing just on the passes that are taking place. Alright, so what's next? Is value structure. Okay, so we've talked about, why isn't it going to the next line?
Right there.
Oh, it's working up here. It's not working on the laptop here. Hang on. Back. Here we go. Value structure. So I've said perception depends on two things: a frame of reference. Which level of analysis are you observing the world at? Are we observing the world in terms of atoms? Are we observing it in terms of obstacles? Are we observing it in terms of a place for interaction? Are we listening? Are we watching? Are we smelling? What's the frame of reference we're using? So that's it for a perception. The other thing we need is some value structure, because you are a biological creature, and so every observation that you make has a value. You only notice things that you value. Okay, so a very basic example is hopefully right now, ideally, you're listening to what I'm saying. Okay, why? Well, hopefully it's interesting. Hopefully you value education, okay? And that, what is that but nested inside, not just being here and listening now, but it's nested inside getting your SACE, which is nested inside maybe going to university, getting a degree, getting a job. What for? All of that's nested inside some big meta-narrative. That's why you're here right now. Okay, right here, right now, you're listening to me because you have some value structure in which this moment here in time, listening to me, is a part of. All right? So a value structure is an ethical framework. That's an argument that we can make, is that because you act in the world, you necessarily have things you value over things you don't. All right? And it depends on your state of mind. If you're hungry, okay, if you're like haven't eaten for 3 days, you're probably hungry, all right? You're going to have a hard time listening to me. Why? Because what do you value now? Not education. You're going to want some cheeseburger. You're going to want some food. You're going to really value food, all right? We see it as biological creatures. An attractive person walks in, you're more likely to notice an attractive people. You look at and you stare at attractive people. If you're tired, all right, you're going to have a hard time concentrating and listening. Why? Because what is it you value in that state? You value sleep. You are a biological creature, and what you value depends on what your body needs for it to survive, right? And so what is this saying? You observe what is useful to you in terms of what you need. Not what is true, you see what is useful. And so the world is, press the next one, it's been a bit temperamental. There we go. The world is an incredibly complex place. I'm going to say the world presents you with an infinite number of facts, all right? But you don't see everything. Your mind filters out everything that is not important. You only visualize, you only see, you only observe, you only create what it is important, what it is that you value. So I'm going to say we have a very low resolution perspective of the world. All right, we don't see things in high definition. We don't see things as they are in all of the colour and sort of majesty that's there. And there's an argument to be made, that's what a lot of, what are these things called? Hallucinogenic drugs do, okay? Is that they remove that inhibitor that stops you from sort of seeing everything, because complete sensory overload. But don't do drugs. So what we're saying about this, we've got value structure, filtering it out. Okay, so here's an important one about vision, all right? You think your vision, you've got like bird vision, like dinosaur vision, okay, in a couple of ways. Firstly, you can see straight ahead, and what you can see straight ahead, you can see very clearly, all right? And like if you guys can do this now, put your arms out here, and then sort of looking straight ahead, and just move them so that you can just see your hands, okay? Now, you can't see it very well, if you're focusing ahead, but you can sort of focus your vision on your hand, okay? You can sort of see it. Now, okay, now if you move it, you can see there's something moving there, okay? But if it's still, you're sort of not sure what it is, all right? And sort of the closer it comes to your field of vision, the more you can see it, the more you can be aware of it. But what's super fascinating about that is that you can see very clearly what you're looking at, and what you're looking at is what you value, okay? Now, where our sort of, if we think of evolutionary history and so forth, where some remnants from dinosaurs comes in, is movement. That's the reptilian vision, okay? Why is movement useful? If something's moving, it's going to get you, all right? It's going to slap you in the face, whatever. So if something's moving, that's why we can see on the outside of our vision movement, but we can't see clearly what things are. It's not important what they are. What's important is that it's moving, all right? If it's moving, it's going to get you. So isn't that fascinating about our vision? You look at what you value, okay? You guys are looking at me now, you're watching the TV later, someone who's attractive walks in, you're going to look at them, okay? You're hungry, you're going to look at food, you look at what you value, orientate your body towards what is important. All right, is there anything else I need to say here? We've talked about vision, peripheries, your mind creates the world. Okay, so here's our conclusion, all right? What have I argued? I've said utility, that's usefulness. What is useful informs our value structure, what it is that we value, and our frame of reference, all right? So like just one more thing about the chair, okay? This chair can present itself to me as something to sit on, okay? That's something that's useful. Or it could be an obstacle. I'm trying to get to the door, I'm trying to get out of here, I'm trying to run away from a lion that's chasing me. The chair's in the way, it's an obstacle. I need to do some parkour, get over the top of it. All right, so the usefulness of this chair depends on my frame of reference, okay? Am I looking at it as an obstacle? Am I looking at it as a tool? And my value structure. Is it something that's going to be useful, or is it something that's going to get in the way? Value structure and frame of reference depend on what? Perception, okay? Or they inform your perception. So it's what we value, and it's our frame of reference that informs what we see, and it's our perception that informs truth. So let's look at the argument again. This is the argument I made at the start. Premise 1, all that is true is limited to what you perceive. Okay, so it's going to be pretty difficult to debate that. We construct a model of the world in our head, all right? We're trying to understand the truth, and it's limited by all of the things that we can take in and see. We're trying to collect all this information together to synthesize a picture of the world, okay? So what I'm doing, it's what you're doing, it's what we're doing in our conversations with one another, it's what we're doing when we read science textbooks. That's what we're doing, okay? Second premise, you only perceive what is useful. Are we convinced of that? That's not. How come?
Well, I can see Jensen, but he might not be useful.
Well, but you see him. You see him as a friend. You see him as an obstacle. You see him as someone that you can learn from and engage with.
I can see the cross, but that's not useful to me.
It's not useful. What about if it's flying towards you and it's going to stab you in the head?
Oh.
but it's not.
So I think you're thinking about useful in a too narrow sense of the word. All right. That's where I would say that. So when I'm saying useful here, I don't mean it has some ultimate use to you. I mean it's inhabiting the world that you live in, and it can be useful. And so here, this was an example of like this. The cross wasn't something that you were observing, but it's something that you pointed out to make a point to me that you're observing something that's not useful. All right, so it's not something that you did when you were observing, it's something that you pointed out. So that being another response. Any other comments? I do take your point, I think that's a fair point. So, as biological creatures, okay, us rising out of some evolutionary process, this may be true, all right? That we are limited to perceiving that which is useful, not that which is true. And so what are the aims of the philosopher and the scientist? Okay, remember that Venn diagram yesterday? We're trying to align our beliefs and get it to overlap with the things that are true. Okay, so we've sort of, as human beings, we've sort of transcended this biological process. We're still subject to it, and we're still very limited in what we can perceive. But what are our goals in philosophy? We're trying to get to that correspondence theory of truth. And it's just funny, right? We talk about truth in terms of a correspondence theory, but how do we live? How do the majority of us live? In terms of this pragmatic theory of truth. What is useful? That's what pragmatic means. All right. Any questions, comments? We can stop.